Welcome. You have found the show we call Real Men Don't Cry, or Do They? This is a podcast for men, and on this show, we will hear real-life stories from men about how they have navigated the complexities of being a man in this modern day. We are going to look at the boys don't cry way of thinking and how that has influenced them and how they have risen above societal pressures to be true to themselves. The focus of this show is men's real-world experiences, not just ideas and theories. I hope that you will learn from what they have discovered and use it in your life as well. Let's get into today's show. Right, welcome to another episode of Real Men Don't Cry, or Do They? I'm Brandon Archer, and today I have Christopher Brand with me. This guy comes out of nowhere into my social media world, and right away I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. And this is quite a few months ago now. This is before I started the podcast, and I'm like, damn, this guy's story is so good. So, Christopher, would you mind, first of all, welcome. Thanks for taking me up on this.
No, thank you for having me. This is really cool.
Yeah. And do you mind just like introducing yourself, sharing what feels right for you to share with people?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I found your Instagram page from following another life coach, so kind of fell into it and just was following you as it. But me personally, I'm 50 years old. I live in Houston, the Houston area, originally from Oklahoma, but I've been in federal law enforcement for 26 years now, almost 27. And I worked on the border back in the 90s. And then after 9/11, I joined Homeland Security, moved up here, been working here ever since. I've been all over the world doing a bunch of different stuff in that aspect. So I have a lot of perspective from at least that atypical type mindset kind of thing. And but my biggest hurdle that I reached was or stressor that I went through was that I was an experiencer of domestic abuse. My wife was my second wife, actually. The over 11 years, it started out with, roses and everything like that, and it started deteriorating and such. And then it came down to a night where she chased me out of the house at gunpoint, fired a shot as I was leaving the house. I was literally stripped down to wearing basketball shorts, barefoot, no shirt. Luckily, it was into September, so it was still warm. Went about a mile and a half to find somewhere I could call for help, ask for help. Got the police involved. She was arrested. She got 2 years probation. And I almost lost my job from the whole process. And so it has a lot. I mean, obviously, domestic abuse is a big issue. And from a male standpoint, it's almost, it's obviously unheard of. So in my process of healing, that happened back in 2018. And so my process of healing that, I've gone through different modalities and different ways of trying to deal with it, from not dealing with it to self-medicating with food and alcohol and risky behavior and all that other kind of stuff, to actually seeking out help, learning and growing. And then I got to a point where I feel pretty healed, but I start to recognize it in other men. I can start, you start talking to other guys and you see these, and it's not just necessarily that they're going through some abusive type situation, but they're going through somewhere where their emotional needs aren't not being met, or they're not feeling complete, or they're not feeling connected. And that's kind of what led me in a roundabout way to start following your Instagram, was like, how do you help? That was my question, is like, how do you help other guys? You see you guys go through it, and I don't know that my particular way of learning and healing would work for everyone, but I see these guys and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And we're not doing anything. So that's why I reached out to you. And I was like, how do you reach out to the people? How do you say, like, hey, let me help you without, it, and be successful at it, So I guess that's a lot. That's it in a nutshell, I guess.
Dude, people that are listening to this are just like, what the fuck?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
and it's great. I appreciate your honesty and your openness. You know, your introduction, you're like, hey, this is my life. This, to me, is that vulnerability and openness
Hmm.
that we need to hear as men. It's
Oh, for sure.
kind of why I started this podcast. Like,
Yeah.
we just need to share our stories
Hmm.
because I know we're at a similar stage in life, similar age, or the exact same age. And we've lived enough where it's like nobody talks about this shit. So you think you're the only one going through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's funny too that I told you I listened to your podcast, one of your previous podcasts, to kind of get a feel. That gentleman that you spoke with, I mean, yeah, I could see parts in his life that echoed my life, and he's definitely a lot younger than I am, and I was like, man. And I think even at one point you were like, dude, if I was able to examine my life at your age, at that, going,
Yeah.
so much difference. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured.
Will's 35.
Mm-hmm.
He's 35. Like, can you
35.
wrap your head around, like, as we're both fit,
Mm-hmm.
approaching 50, or we are 50, it's like, it took some catastrophic shit for me to look at my life and figure stuff out. He's
Oh
doing it
yeah.
like more than a decade before me. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in some circles, it's called like a dark night of the soul, some
Yeah.
catastrophic event where you lose everything and it makes you reevaluate. And it's kind of an ego death in a way. I mean, you're not actual dying, but you've lost it all. And you're like, how did I get here? What did I do? And
Yeah.
I think also too, I think our programming from our childhood helped push it off, where we were lying to ourselves and not wanting to face those issues. And I do think that's something about the younger generations now. They seem to be more in touch with their feelings, or it's okay to kind of process stuff. So it's okay to talk to and come to those decisions sooner than us saying, no, that can't be happening to me. Like you said, I'm the only one. I must be the anomaly. I gotta be, I can't do. All my other friends seem happy.
Yeah, man. You keep bringing up these things. I'm like, which thread do I pull? Which thread do I pull? I want to quickly touch. I want to get back to your story, but I want to quickly touch on something you said about, Will's age, mid 30s. Because I had a conversation with a coach, which I respect, and I think he's early 30s, but this guy,
Okay.
he's on point.
Okay.
And I asked him a question. I'm like, hey, what age group are you attracting? And he's like, that's irrelevant. And I'm like, well, no, it's actually not. It's actually not. It's like, it's about transformation. I'm like, I agree with you, but here's the reality. We're both 50.
Mm-hmm.
There's some blocks that somebody in their 30s, it's less. The blocks
Mm-hmm.
are less.
Oh yeah.
And I think we should talk about, childhood and our fathers and our grandfathers and where that came from, because, somebody in their early 30s might be like, what are you old fuckers talking about?
Yeah.
That's not a thing. But that's the exact point I was trying to make to this coach. Is like, where's the guys in their 40s and 50s digging in? Yeah, you're attracting guys in your 30s. There's something there.
Mm-hmm.
There's something there. I don't even know where to go with that.
Well, again,
think?
I think the 40s and 50-year-olds don't realize it. They don't think about it until they've lost everything, until they get to that. They don't realize that there's they don't really realize along the way that you can actually say, no, this isn't right. This to feel this way or something like that. I mean, even with just feeling bad, just with feelings, we're not supposed to feel bad. That was the thing, and so you got to push through it. You got to muscle through it, rub dirt on it, whatever. And I mean, my marriage was 11 years. And at the beginning, it wasn't what I thought it was, what it was going to be. But, quickly on, I started seeing red flags that I should have put in place to stop. I should have just put the brakes on. Had I been more control of myself, I would have put the brakes on. But it affected me. It affected my children. I didn't have any children with her, but my relation to my kids, I call it I call it my villain era, because I supported her and her kids when I should have been supporting myself and my own kids. But I didn't know to do that because I had that old programming of, this is the cards you've been dealt. You play those cards out. You made these decisions. You made the bed, so lie in it. And I tried. I did the best I could, and it wasn't until it got to dire circumstances. And I think a lot of guys our age do that. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what, I don't know any better. That kind of stuff. So, and it's not until they, again, lose everything. And then it becomes their fault because they've been self-medicating with alcohol or some other process, and their life is destroyed and in shambles. And they only start asking for help once they've lost everything. And there needs to be a way for guys our age saying you don't have to get to that point. You can ask for help and you're not weak. You're not a loser, that kind of stuff. That's my opinion.
No, you're right. You're right. It's not just an opinion. I think it's right.
Yeah.
So what were you modeled about how to be a man when you were a kid that got you to that point, that way of thinking?
Well, that's the thing, is that my parents met in the 7th grade, and they were together their entire lives. When they passed away, both passed away in 2012 within 7 weeks of each other. And so as far as the nuclear unit, husband and wife together through thick and thin, that was the initial modeling of at least that part. And then, so here I am in 7th and 8th grade looking around going, all right, who am I supposed to link up with? Who am I supposed to, and that didn't happen. Immediately felt like a failure. And so I just stacked it on. And my interpersonal relationship with my dad, it was good. He was a good guy, but he was, he's an older generation. He either raged or was quiet. And of course he was one of the funny guys in the room too. So he was able to get a lot of people to like him and stuff like that because he had a great sense of humor and stuff. But at home, like, it was like, I don't have time for that. I don't want to hear it, that kind of stuff. And then, do you need to talk to your mom about that? Do you need to, that kind of stuff, is, those kind of things, are you going to cry about it? Do you want to go talk to your mom? Should you go sit in the kitchen, and learn, which, you know what? Actually, I did too. Like, my mom taught me to cook and taught me how to do, basic life building skills, which actually is invaluable. But, I was made to feel a bit ashamed of that, I'm some kind of mama's boy or something like that, and, and I was, I was late 20s, in the Border Patrol. I was taking down, traffickers, drug dealers, child trafficking that we talk about now, that was literally going on at that time. I was taking down big loads of people and telling my parents about it. My dad's like, still not tough enough to take your old man, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, okay, all right, so stuff like that. I mean, that was that. And then the thing is that I didn't realize until much older in life that my parents, they had anxiety. They were afraid a lot. There was a lot of fear-based movement and stuff. And my dad was a firefighter for 11 years. After that, he became a oil and gas producer, self-made, businessman, successful. But they still dealt with fear, and a lot of decisions they made were fear-based. And instead of processing that or even telling their kids, I don't know how we're going to get through this. I don't know how this is going to happen. They would make something up. My dad did not want to appear weak or unknowledgeable or ignorant or whatever you want to say. He didn't want to appear that way. So he would always drum up something. And I didn't find out until, again, when I'm older and I'm like, wait, that didn't quite jive. That didn't make a lot of sense,
Mm-hmm.
And seeing my parents as regular people that were just trying to make it the best they could. And, there was things that we just didn't talk about. We didn't talk about finances at home. The kids you're too young. You're not supposed to know about finances. You're not supposed to talk about this or that or the other. And they almost had a whole secret life that they lived outside the kids. And so you kind of did that too. And that was the thing, is when I was going through my problems, instead of talking to my spouse about it or anything like that, I engaged in secret stuff, and tried to get my needs met without talking to my partner. And that led to the end of my first relationship, or first marriage. So, it's stuff like that. It's just, it's hard to say. It's hard to put like a finger on it, because I hear stories about guys talking about time with their dad, and my dad had this philosophy and my dad did this, and I didn't have that. But he was making the way the best he could. And I didn't understand that now, because he was my superhero still. Like, he was like, he's 6 foot tall and, 250 pounds and, that kind of guy. Like I said, firefighter, lifesaver, the whole thing. And so that, and then, he's my hero, but at the same time, he was like my biggest critic as well, too. So it kind of sucks.
Yeah, man. I can hear in your voice a lot of love for him.
Yeah, and see, that was another thing too. When he passed in 2012, I found him. I found him in his apartment. We had an argument on a Friday night, and typically I didn't call him for a couple of days, and then I started trying to call him on Monday morning. Couldn't get a hold of him, and I had helped him get into his apartment. I had to move him down because he had health issues. My mom had, back in the 90s, she had an aneurysm that left her pretty much like a vegetable, about 30% of her operating capacities. So at that point, he started taking care of her completely, and he let his own health go down. So for 17 years, he took care of her solely. When she needed, actual medical care, he took care of her completely. And at the expense of his own health. And then they had a bad accident. I found out about it. It's just me and my sister, the two siblings, or the two kids. And I moved him down from Oklahoma down to Houston. I'm like, all right, I'm taking over now. This is me, And I moved him into an apartment because my wife wouldn't let him stay with us. This is my second wife, number two. And I moved to an apartment, and 2 months later he had passed. And so I had to break into, me and the maintenance guy, the apartment maintenance guy, broke into the apartment and found him. So,
that's a lot, man. That's a lot to experience.
Yep.
You shared something about your childhood and your dad referring you to mom when you were showing emotions, and then being shamed later for being a mama's boy. Who was doing that shaming?
That was him. I mean, that was, I even took a little bit of a pride in having a good relationship with my mom and having conversations with her and stuff. So, but the minute I showed any kind of pride or something like that, my dad, and I think that came from his past programming, that I couldn't be too prideful in anything. So I had to be knocked down a few steps. So there always was a backhanded compliment or just a straight out critique, that kind of stuff. So, and it kind of sucked. So, but it didn't really influence my relationship with my mom much, but it was just one of those things, those little barbs that stick in the back of your head and kind of, be that way or whatever,
Yeah, well, when your superhero is also shaming you, that gets tricky, right? It's a confusing message. It's like, well, wait a minute, you just told me to go to mom, and now you're giving me shit for going to mom because you didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah,
it's hard for a teenager or a boy to get that messaging from his dad. Hey, I have a question that is just intriguing me. What did you know your grandfather very much on your dad's side?
No, he passed when I was real young. He was a diesel mechanic, that kind of, I didn't know much about my dad's side of the family because my dad had not a lot to do with him, and his opinion of his mom was not that great. And so I never referred to her as grandmother or anything like that. She was Joanne. That was, like,
interesting.
yeah. And then some of the stories that he told me were direct levels of an abusive relationship, and that she would take it out on him as well because he favored, I think he was the oldest boy, and he favored his dad almost in looks. They almost looked exactly alike. And Joanne couldn't stand it. So he was punished a lot just for being who he was. So
here we go with the generational patterns, right?
Right.
Like, you know, because you kind of stepped into that. Oh, I'm just going to repeat the pattern of,
mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
perhaps your second wife was more like your grandmother, and you didn't even know perhaps you were choosing that.
That's a really good point. Never put two and two together, because that was one of the things towards the end of that relationship. My relationship, she lost her job as an RN for stealing the meds from her patients, and then she had, like, they did a random drug test on her, and there was 4 prescription meds in her that shouldn't be. So, and then I remember my dad telling me there was a lot of substance abuse with his mother too. So it's real interesting that you picked that point. Are we going to turn this into a therapy session?
Well, hell yeah, let's do it. Well, see, here's the thing, man. I don't think we ever talked about this before, but trauma and epigenetics is a real goddamn thing. And your grandfather's choices and wounds, you carry that shit. So if he was predispositioned to seek out women like that who came from his lineage, you can't. This is like proven data, and I did not like hearing this when I first heard that I got to deal with my previous ancestors' garbage.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? I got enough of my own to unpack. I got to unpack theirs too.
Right.
But it's subconscious.
Right.
It's subconscious. So you may have, I can't like tell you that that's what happened with
Sure.
your second ex-wife, but the similarities are a bit eerie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was the thing, is that I was always attracted to, well, both my exes are nurses. So I was attracted to the,
caregiver.
Well, the caregiver, but also I would say a very capable woman, like a woman that, like, didn't need a lot, that seemed to be able to function on their own without much direction or anything. That wasn't too needy. But at the same time, they were kind of, power forward thinking, I guess, the best way to, trying to be euphemistic or at least kind in the way I was referring to it.
So by choosing women like that, did it mean you didn't have to own your masculinity and your role as a man?
Yeah, that's probably a good way to look at it. But see, that's the thing, is that, like I said, I've been in law enforcement for all this time. So I had a outside persona, of that, of, your hard charging, high speed, low drag, tactical, dude. I do that all the time.
Yeah, man. On the outside, you're like you're this masculine beast.
Yeah.
But in relationship, interesting how it may not have correlated.
Yeah. Well, because that, think about that too. I was very quick to give my power away too, because things like my financial issues and stuff, because I didn't make it a priority, my financial stuff. So I would bounce checks or run up a credit card or something like that. And then both wives, I would turn the finances over to them. I'm like, you know what, you pay the bills. I'll make the money, but you pay the bills, and I don't want to have to deal with it, And both times that came back to bite me when the relationship was over. Because, like, here I am stuck, and I'm like, I don't know what to pay. I don't know what I have to, deal with and stuff. I kind of had to learn that stuff all over again. And that is emasculating when you're, let's see, I got divorced. The first time I got divorced, mid-30s. And, I was like, shit, I don't even know how to balance a checkbook, that kind of stuff. So these are hard things to admit, you know?
Yeah, I've heard that a few times from men that get divorced or the other end on their ex-wives. Viewpoint is like, yeah, I did everything, and now he doesn't know how to do anything.
Hmm.
It's interesting that we give that power away.
Yeah.
So what have you done to recover and find yourself?
You know, it's funny because like um the second go around, I knew I needed help bad because I was having severe PTSD, and but it was coupled with a lot of other stuff. Like there was not being able to mourn for my parents on top of the PTSD and stuff. I mean, I was convinced that because she was still going through her stuff, I was convinced she was still gonna find me and hunt me down one day, you know. And I remember there was the constable's office the night that she was arrested. They went to the judge and petitioned for a protective order because I didn't even ask for that. Like I was like, no, I can still fix this. I can still make this out, you know, because I was worried about her kids and you know how it was going to be and how it was going to look.
Right.
I was like, no, I can still fix this. And the lieutenant was like, man, you could have died tonight. I don't want to hear it. He's like, take the time we give you, get your shit and get out, you know. And he's like, it's not going to end well for you. And so they petitioned for the judge to get a protective order. I got like 90 days where she couldn't be around me for 90 days. And so I had the whole house to myself. I could pack up all my stuff, take care of my stuff, and then move out. Well, that whole time, I never slept in a bed. I slept on the floor, I slept in the dining room, slept under tables because I was convinced that she was going to come back and finish what she had, you know, started because she was so unpredictable. And you know, she was living with her brother-in-law at the time. And in fact, his wife, my sister-in-law at the time, would call me up and say, hey, we lost her. She's gone. She's supposed to go pick up her daughter.
Where she is.
Yeah, we don't know where she is. And on top of that, at the same time, because of what had happened, my agency took my badge and gun because I was involved in a domestic issue. And you can't be in law enforcement if there's domestic issues pending. And I'm like, I'm the victim here. So they're like, doesn't matter. So they put me on the front desk.
So she might have had a gun, but you didn't have a gun.
I didn't have a gun. Okay. I'll back that up. It's Texas. I had guns, but I didn't have.
It's Texas.
I didn't have.
You didn't have your.
I didn't have my
issue weapon. I didn't have.
Yeah. And on top of that, they took my creds. I've never lost my creds. I was never accused of any kind of wrongdoing or anything like that. So there was an identity there of being law enforcement. Like I always had my creds, my badge, my shield, that kind of stuff. So they stripped me of that, stripped me of a way that my primary way of defending myself, what I saw is that.
How was your manhood tied up in there too?
Well, I mean, I think that's almost a rhetorical question because it was my whole manhood at that point because, I was like, what do I do? You know, because I didn't have a concealed carry permit. I didn't have anything like that. We didn't have the laws that we had now where you can carry without a concealed permit in Texas. And in fact, I mean, I'm a firearms instructor. I'm a tactical pistol instructor and tactical shotgun instructor. I mean, you know, but I didn't have access to my tools. I didn't have access to my things that made me feel safe. The first thing I did was petition the state to become a firearms instructor for the state to start teaching the classes for concealed carry because I felt like, hey, I need to be able to, you know, because I didn't have access to somebody at that time. I need to make it to where I can do that. That was somewhat of what I did to reclaim my power, you know. And
right.
And one of those things too was that I had to go find my guns because a lot of times when we'd have fights and arguments, the first thing she would do, and it's that whole isolating thing, she would take the keys to my car, she'd take my wallet, she'd take my phones and my firearms, and she would hide them.
Wow.
And then proceed to, you know, because it was almost systematically. In retrospect, it was almost systematic how she would be like, you know, go and take and hide this stuff. So I had to go through the house, and that was one of the things too. in the process of going trying to find my stuff is when I found her illicit materials and stuff like that, where she was using, and I'm finding bags and bags and bags of hospital stuff. I'm like, this is insane. And that was one of those things. I'm like, this is a Nurse Jackie episode. This is like not real life. This can't be. This has got to be an HBO special, because this is nuts. Finding. I mean, the nightstand table was full of bloody cotton balls and tourniquets where she would shoot up. And no clue. Absolutely. In retrospect, I think I was being willfully ignorant of it, because I felt like I was trying to protect her privacy, and maybe she'll protect my privacy. And but that wasn't the case. I mean, I had no privacy, and she was able to do whatever she wanted. But yeah, I didn't have, at the time, like I said, I didn't have the tools that I felt that I was used to protecting myself. And go ahead.
Well, I'm just zooming out to now. Like, your story is epic, and I really, honestly hope. I know for a fact there's men out there going through similar things, and they don't know what to do because there's shame. There's shame. There's shame to come forward or get help. What do you do now to feel safe?
It's a different mindset now. I really have changed in the process, because, like I said, the whole the PTSD part, the stressors and stuff, puts you in a loop to where you stop thinking. And that's where it's that, what do they call it? It's a reason loop or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but you just stop thinking, because you have one stimulus and then you have this one response, and you ruminate, and you like, I should have thought of this or should have thought of that. And it's just this self-shame spiral.
Well, you're in survival mode. You're literally in survival mode.
Yeah.
Your nervous system and your brain start a loop that you aren't, if you're not aware it's happening, it just goes on repeat.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that survival mode's there for a reason. That's another thing too, is that yes, you are in survival mode and you are trying to stay safe, and it still runs after you have been safe for a period of time, but you just don't know it. You're not allowing yourself to feel that. Like I said, for anybody that's watching that's in that survival mode, that's perfectly okay to be in that survival mode, because it is serving you. It has served you. It's kept you alive to this point. But there's a time where you have to make a switch into that thrive mode, to where you put that thing aside and you're like, I am safe. I'm okay. Because that's the thing, is that for the longest time, it wasn't until recently, she was still on my insurance. I was still paying for her and her kids to go see the dentist and for whatever, and so there was all these different ties to her that slowly had to be removed before I felt like I was not connected to her anymore. We still live in the same general area, but this is my third time that I've moved, and I'm pretty certain that she doesn't know exactly where I live now. But and my apartment's a little bit more secure than I have been. I went from the low rent apartments and just kind of like jumped up to a little bit more places that I'm proud to be at and stuff. So
how do you make yourself feel safe now?
Now it's a lot of introspective stuff. I'm into meditation now, yoga, spiritual practices. Yeah, all that stuff.
It works, man. It works.
It does. It works. And there was a literal switch that was flipped at one point. And I never thought it was going to be kind of like with drinking. I thought I had a problem. I even went to AA for several months thinking that, this is the only way. Going to AA made me want to drink. It was not the place for me to be. Yeah. I kind of remember the story. There's a story about a guy who's in church, and while he's in church, his cell phone goes off, and the pastor makes a big deal of it, and his wife chastises him about it, and he just feels like crap, and he leaves. And so later that evening, he decides to go to a local bar just to kind of have one. And while he's at the bar, he knocks over a glass, and the waitress is like, "Are you okay?" And the bartender's like, "Dude, it's all right, man." Buys him another drink, They take care of him. People kind of slap him on the back. Hey, man, it's cool and stuff. And he feels safe at the bar, so he never leaves that bar. So those areas that you go to, like with AA and stuff like that, you think of them as safe places, but because you might not have a great experience there, it might not be the place for you. It might not be a place to find your safe spot. You have to kind of find it elsewhere.
Is so fucking insightful.
Yeah.
So insightful.
Yeah.
Like the podcast you listen to, Will, like he's recovered and he's totally open about it. And I think he would probably agree with what you just said, because he did work with me one-on-one, and he's like, I had no idea that this is the stuff I needed.
Yeah.
Yoga, meditation, all the things you just shared that helped you recover, you just basically Will backed it up. It's super fascinating.
It is.
But the way you said that, I'm chopping that into a clip, because that's powerful for people with addictions. I think it is.
No, I agree. Well, and there's a lady now. I went back and forth with her through Instagram. She's created, because I enjoy the tarot cards and the woo woo stuff now. All that kind of stuff. So she created an oracle deck that is for addiction recovery, and so it's an addiction recovery oracle deck, and you go through the cards each day, and it's letters of empowerment. It's not necessarily angel dust and rainbows and stuff like that, but it's words of empowerment and acknowledgments and stuff, and you go through it each day, and it's really cool. And so I really enjoyed chatting with her and getting her deck, and where I don't
that's
feel
a
like
great tool.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It is a tool. And so yeah, and I'm glad it was able to put it. She was another person that had alcohol issues and did not find a conventional way to work for it. Me personally,
well, let's put that, or we'll put that link in the show notes to find her, because
I'll definitely,
think that's fantastic.
I'd love to get you guys in contact. So yeah, she's a great lady. But that was the thing, is that I found, because that's another deal with drinking. People talk about anxiety. Anxiety for me was a form of sobering up. Like, that was my hangover, was anxiety. But I linked it to, well, I'm anxious, so a couple of drinks will take that edge off. And it was just a vicious circle that I got into. And it wasn't until I was doing Reiki and learning about energy centers and moving stuff through your body, and I'm like, I can't really do that when I'm hungover. I can't really do that after having a couple of drinks. I feel blocked. I literally feel my energy centers blocked. And so, maybe I shouldn't have any drinks right now, because I'm going to do some Reiki in the morning or whatever. I don't want that, So I would say gradually, but it was a quick gradual, decided, like, I don't want to drink like that anymore. And I don't. I have 2 bottles of whiskey and a bottle of wine in my fridge right now that I keep for guests. And I don't drink them. I don't, the last beer I had was what I put in my chili when me and my girlfriend made chili the other night. So,
man, I the way you came to that conclusion is amazing. And the anxiety is a message. Anxiety is a message. Hey, look at me. We need to deal with something over here.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's also a physical response to your body having needs, because your body has been assaulted with a chemical cocktail that has left you dehydrated and clouded thinking and all that kind of stuff. So the anxiety is another indicator that something else is wrong. You need to hydrate. Basic needs. That's one of those things too that you forget when you are going through that survival mode, is those basic needs of feeding yourself, staying hydrated, staying clean, doing your laundry, those kind of little things. And that's another, like, SEAL tip. Navy SEALs are like, if you feel bad, if you can't function, at least make your bed. At least you get that one thing done. And and I agree with that to a degree, but I'll even go back, just getting out of bed sometimes
man,
you got to celebrate that, because for people that go through depression and stuff, that, again, it's another emotion that your body's telling you there's something wrong. If you need to sleep all day, then sleep all day. Don't feel bad about that.
I love that you brought that up, because, man, I've had a dark night of the soul. I've had a way into my psyche where all my trauma comes just gushing out, and it's messy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you do need to sleep. And I think it's important men hear this. I really think it's important, because a lot of the like teaching for men, I'm going to, not throwing them under the bus, but in your 30s, you have this warrior energy. I'm going to fucking conquer the world. Yeah, I get it. But guess what? When you need to rest, when your body and your nervous system is screaming at you, I need to sleep, you need to honor that. You don't necessarily need to push through. So this is a word of caution. Be careful at the information you're consuming, because it can actually cause you more harm. If you can't get out of bed, sometimes it's not the best thing to push yourself through to get out. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, though, right?
Right. Well, and it's funny like that. You were talking about, and I remember you were talking about that in the podcast too, that balance too of like pushing yourself, but also giving yourself space. There's a saying, and you can Google it on, or whatever, the demon hand and Buddha heart. It's
never heard that.
It's a philosophy from Buddhists, Shaolin monks and warriors and all that stuff. But whereas basically have a demon hand, which is mainly have a capacity for violence, but with a Buddha heart, you control that through compassion. And the compassion is also for yourself. That's another thing too. It is self-love is paramount. I think that's what I found out that I had been looking for in a bunch of other relationships, or all my relationships, was I wanted that unconditional love that I didn't feel at some point.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling it is because I didn't have unconditional love for myself. And it wasn't until I had that for myself that I'm allowed to go and find that in somebody else. So that's another, big, what do you call it? Revelation that I had
but that revelation is so foreign to men. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I love my kids. I love my wife. I love everybody. I'll share my story with self-love, and self-loathing. I could not look in the mirror and respect that guy that was looking back at me. I didn't know how that felt. And the way I put it to people, because men and women struggle with this, unless you can look in the mirror, and if you have kids, this makes way more sense. And you look at yourself in the mirror, you smile, and you feel the same warmth as when you're talking to your kids, and that unconditional love you have for them, you don't actually love yourself.
Agreed, 100%.
And most people can't do that. And I can tell, like, this is a podcast and we are recording the video, but I can tell in your face and the way you emote, like, you are a happy dude. And that's
yeah, agreed.
It comes, even though the story that you've just shared with everyone is like, what the actual fuck? You've done the work to like get to a point where like, yeah, you know what? That shit happened, and I'm a good guy, and I really like me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That and it's funny you say that, because my 50th birthday, I threw a big birthday party for myself. I invited as many friends as I could, or people I knew. I had T-shirts printed up with my face on it. I had a friend of mine that had created a logo of my face. I still got a bunch. I'll send you one if you want one.
Size medium.
Size medium. Okay, I'll get you out there. Yeah. I had stickers made up. I have stickers, all this other kind of stuff. I went to this retreat a few years ago, and they said, bring a water bottle. And I was holding the water bottle, and she's like, is that your face on the water bottle? I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. And I was walking downtown one time, and I had the T-shirt on with my face on it. And a guy's like, is that your face on your T-shirt? I'm like, yes, it is. And he's like, are you famous? And I'm like, well, I am to me. And
yeah,
he's like, that's awesome, dude. So, he shook my hand and stuff like that. But yeah, I would have never done that 3 years ago, 5 years ago. No freaking way. I could not look at myself in the mirror either. Not to mention that, because that's one of those things that I had from childhood too. I had a weight problem, and I've always had weight issues. I had weight loss surgery in 2004, lost 80 pounds and put it all back on. So that's something. So my personal vision of myself was not always good. But that, it is what it is now, and but yes, you're absolutely right. I really do have a lot of fun being myself now. That is one of my like personal joys, is just goofing off and being me. So
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm gonna come see you one day, man. There's some people all over the States. It's like, we got to hang out face to face, and you're on that list. So I look forward to that day.
All right. Absolutely.
I'll
show you a great time.
You bring up something really interesting. Yeah, man. Texas sounds fun. I've never been there, but it sounds awesome.
Oh yeah.
And you can show me how to shoot guns. Never shot a gun in my life.
That's definitely going to be. I know that's kind of like it's like always a bucket list for people who want to come out, but we'll do it right. So
yeah.
So
you said something about body image. I also, fuck, man, this is such a thing, because again, referring to, and I'm not throwing them under the bus, it's where they are at in life. These early 30s coaches, got to work out, you got to be jacked. I'm like, no, yeah, I get it. Like, I'm an athlete, I get it. But that does not have to be tied to self-love. And I think that's really important, especially for guys our age or in their 40s, or if you're, air quotes, unfit, dude, that doesn't mean you can't love yourself.
Right. Well, no, and that's the thing.
Means you might have some shame around not having the self-discipline to work out. That's very different. That's very different than loving yourself.
Yeah. Agreed. Because that's the thing, is that I have health issues that result from not treating myself well. And, again, I have to own that, and I have to work on it, and I have to do it for myself. I'm just very fortunate to be in a position to acknowledge it and be able to do something about it. That's one of the things. I'm not in a hospital bed or anything like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things, though. I think that's almost a marketing thing with that younger generation about having to be fit, because that's an easy fix. We'll get yourself in the gym. And again, that's another push through kind of thing. You feel like shit, just go to the gym, just do something. And then you have something to build off of. I'm sorry, my robot keeps hearing me. Yeah. But yeah, push through and all that kind of stuff. I still think that's some of that programming where you're kind of pushing through. But granted, being able to, having good cardiovascular fitness and stuff like that is good for you. But what the reality is that you need to be able to breathe. That's like number one. In my job, we have a thing called combat breathing, and it's quick breaths, in for 2, hold for 2, out for 2 when you're in a stressful situation, and to get you through. And then a deep breath where you're like, fill up. I know Andrew Huberman talked about that too, where you take a deep breath in to where your lungs are packed full, and then take one more gasp in and then let it out. And that just drops your stress levels like crazy. Yeah. That's a real quick meditation to do too. So, being able to breathe. Let's get her, because there's times when you feel like shit and you don't even want to breathe. Yeah. So I think,
I mean, the jack thing, like, don't get me wrong, it's so nuanced, and this is where I have found I've got to be at a certain stage in life to like wrap my head around this, because I've seen coaches out there just shaming the shit out of people if they're overweight. I'm like, that's kind of like low vibe, man. Like, you don't understand actually what being a human's about, because yes, we should, air quotes, and the second you say should, that's shame-based, be healthy. Should we be jacked? Right. That's not realistic. Like, the amount of work and time it takes to get jacked is a lot. Can you live a healthy lifestyle? Yes. Can you love yourself no matter what you see in the mirror? Fuck yeah, you can. And that's why I say, if you've got kids, this makes more sense. There is no fucking way I will take away love from my kids if they put on 20 or 30 pounds. Am I concerned for their well-being? Hell yeah. It's very different. And I'm passionate about this, as you can tell, because it's there's a missing component in there. You do create feelings of euphoria when you work out, and I think people should. I know I feel better when I hit my goals.
For sure.
Doesn't mean you can't love yourself through that time.
Correct. Yeah. That's the God's honest truth right there. Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, we could talk for hours. I want to I'm trying to keep these now to under an hour because I think we lose people's attention. So I want to ask you a couple questions to kind of close it out.
Okay.
Yeah. What message do you have for a previous version of yourself?
That's a really good point, because I think back to there's about a 10-year-old me, like a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old me. And then there's about an early 20s me. And when you say that, that's the first person I go to in that. But I think the message is still the same, is that the things that you love at that point, the things that are lighting you up, stick with them, man. Don't let anybody take that away from you, because you're onto something. Everybody's telling you don't know any better because you're just a kid, or you don't know any better just because you're, a 19-year-old. But those are the things that you love to do, and stick with it and stay with that. That's probably, that was probably the biggest message I'd have delivered to myself. So.
I fucking love that. I agree with you 100%. Anything less is self-betrayal, and unfortunately society's set up for us as men, not especially, I shouldn't say that, in general, that you should betray yourself, and it doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work.
Agreed.
What closing words would you like from men that you would like? What point would you like them to take away from this podcast?
I was not expecting that question. I was trying to read ahead in the book to get some answers, but what I want every man to know from this podcast is that you are okay as you are right now. You're good, man. And you have a lot of good qualities and things that make you unique, and that uniqueness adds to the collective universe, as far as you are an important cog in the wheel of the universe, because what you do, no one else does it like that. And you are awesome for it. And you should celebrate yourself for that fact. That's what I tell them.
Man, it's so amazing. You have this open-hearted wisdom, this connection with yourself that I can just feel it, man, through the screen. I've never met you in person. We'll remedy that one day.
Yeah.
But powerful. Thank you for sharing your story and some helpful points for other men. You bet.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I reached out to you that one day. I'm glad I commented on your thing. So
yeah, small world. Nothing's a coincidence. You landed here for a reason. You said you wanted to help men.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the vehicle to do that.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the thing. You can post my Instagram, and it's the same for TikTok too, if anybody wants to look me up too and ever want to reach out. So
yeah, man, we'll do that in the show notes. Thanks for being here, Christopher.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the time to be here today. I honestly hope you found something you can use in your life. And I hope you found some relief in knowing that you're not the only one with challenges. We can be very isolated as men. If you don't have support in your life, please reach out to someone. It's okay to need help. It doesn't mean that you're less of a man. In fact, it takes a courageous man to know when it's time to ask for guidance. Until next time, brother.